Good morning, everyone. We start with second lesson, installation of Linux. We have completed with introduction of Linux. We have seen what are the different types of Linux operating system. Then we had seen the features and characteristics of Linux. We are also aware about the different directories which are there inside the Linux, different users which are there inside the Linux. So we have root user and a normal user. For both of them, the shell or the terminal is different. So now we'll see how do we install this operating system inside our computer. Okay. So the outcome is to install and configure Linux, Windows 2003 server and set up a DHCP server. So, but with respect to this chapter, we'll be only covering installation and configuration of Linux. DHCP server and Windows 2003 server will be covered later. Okay. So now, what is pre-installation checklist? Now, what do you mean by pre-installation checklist? Before I install anything inside a computer system, not only operating system, but let it be any device or any software, we have to prepare a checklist. Now, what is that checklist? That is what all things will I require. I have to make a list of it. And as soon as I cover each and every part of that installation, I simply have to tick on it. That is what is a checklist. So suppose if I want to install a mouse inside my computer system. So what all list I have to prepare is, first I have to purchase a mouse. Before purchasing, I have to see what type of mouse is good, whether mechanical mouse is good or optical mouse is good or optomechanical mouse is good. So after that, I will see the price of that mouse. So if I've selected that I'm supposed to use optical mouse, I'll see the different manufacturers of those mouse. I may select a mouse of Dell, I may select a mouse of HP. Then I will select the budget, that what is the cost of that mouse, what cost is feasible for me. After that, I'll see whether I have to consider a wireless mouse or a wired mouse. So what is all this? This is nothing but a checklist that I'm preparing before I buy that particular device. So I have to look into the hardware part also, as well as I have to look into the software part also. So now what will be the software part if it is mouse? I have to see to it that the device drivers are installed with respect to that particular mouse or not. So that becomes the software part. So before I install anything into my system, let it be any operating system or software or hardware, I have to prepare some kind of a list and then I have to go according to that list. Okay, so that we call it as pre-installation checklist. So now what do we have? A pre-installation checklist is a must-have documentation before we begin to install an operating system. Okay, so as I said, even if it is an operating system, I should have some kind of checklist with me. Okay, so pre-installation checklist is an information about. What kind of information will that pre-documentation or a pre-installation checklist will have? It will cover the entire system, that is the hardware, software, networking, everything. Okay, so whole system from computer hardware components to the networking components to the networking attachment to the software, everything will be covered. If it is, I will also have to consider the software, the version of the software, the license key, the networking information and the hardware information. Okay, so if I say that I want to install an operating system, I have to see that from where I have to get that software. That means from where I have to download that operating system, whether is it available for free of cost or I have to pay to particular site to download. So I have to see everything with respect to that, which is the software. Next is a version. Now, if I ask you to install a Linux, a very next question that you will ask me that, ma'am, which version of Linux am I supposed to install? So there are many versions. Some of might select the latest version, some of you might select the intermediate version, or some of you might go with a very old version. So that depends from user to user. So I also should know that what are the different versions and what are the features that each and every version provides. And based on that features, it depends on user that which version that a user install. Then with every operating system, I also get a license key if it is paid. Okay, since Linux is a free source, so I will not have any kind of a license key. But if it is Windows, I will always get a license key number from a manufacturer. Okay, but if you know how to crack and install that, it doesn't require a license key. But if you are doing it in a very legal manner, you will always require a license key. So some of the operating systems which you purchase always has a license key. But if it is a free source operating system or an open source operating system, you do not require this license key. Then next is a networking data. That means you require some kind of network connectivity also, because if it is Linux, now what is happening, we do not have any license key, or I'm not going to purchase it. I will be downloading it from some site. So for that, I will require a network connection of my computer. So if I do not have that network connectivity, I'm not able to download. Or else what I have to do is I have to go to some computer where there is a network connectivity, download it there, take it into pen drive, and then boot it from the pen drive into my system. So that alternative can also be used. Then next is the hardware information. Now what do you mean by hardware information? I will require some kind of minimum hardware for that operating system to support. That means I'll require some amount of CPU speed, some amount of RAM, some amount of hard disk. So what is that minimum configuration? That also I should know. Because if I do not have that much configuration in my system, and if I purchase it, I won't be able to install. So I should also know what kind of hardwares are used and what is the minimum configuration of that hardware. Next is, now what hardware, if it is hardware, what part or what components of hardware do I need to check? So information about hardware can be found in the manufacturer's manual. Okay, when you buy some computer or when you buy any device, you always get a manual. It shows you how you're supposed to install, where you're supposed to plug in, from where you have to plug out. Every details are there. So what is the one way? Either you follow that manufacturer manual. If at all you do not get a manufacturer manual, you can visit to the website of that manufacturer. You will get all the details. So that is the alternative. But now what hardware do you require is you should have a CPU. So let it be any OS, any software, any hardware. If you do not have a CPU, your device is not going to work. So your CPU as a hardware part should be there inside the system. Then you should have, if it is a CPU, what type it should be. It can have any type from i3 till all the latest version. That is i3, i4, i5, i6, i7 is being supported. Now again, this will keep on changing depending upon the system that you have. Suppose if I'm using an AMD processor, my AMD will not support all the devices which are supported by your i3, i4, i5, i6 and so on. So before you buy any device, you should always see the processor compatibility also, because you have different types of processor. AMD is one of the processor, IBM are the generations of processor, your Intel has generation of processors. Then in the previous time we have 80, 85, 80 series. So all these are the different types of processor, and every processor supports different types of devices. But it is always said that if it is Intel, it will support all kind of devices. Okay, so whenever we buy, we generally prefer buying the processor which are of Intel. And from there we select whether we want i3, i4, i5 or i6 depending upon what speed or what kind of work I am going to do on the system. Next is the processor speed. What is the processor speed? It is generally in gigahertz, but if it is Linux operating system, it will also work if your if your CPU is having a speed in megahertz. So it is not necessary you should buy i3 with 3 gigahertz of speed. Even if i3 is with a speed of megahertz, your Linux operating system is going to work. Only the difference will be, it will be little slow as compared to that in the speed of gigahertz. Okay. So you require CPU which can be of any Intel, any series of Intel, and the speed should be megahertz. It can be gigahertz also. If it is megahertz, it will work little slow, but if it is gigahertz, it will work in a better speed. The next is random access memory. Now what is random access memory? Will require some kind of storage inside the RAM. So we also should see that my system should have a RAM. Now what size of RAM it should have? Nowadays we have 3 GB RAM, 2 GB RAM, 4 GB RAM, 8 GB, 16 GB and so on. But if it is a Linux, you can have a RAM which is in terms of size in MB. Okay, it is not necessary you should have 2 GB or it should be 4 GB or in GBs. If you have RAM, if it in the MBs, your Linux will easily install into it and it will work in that size also. Okay, you will require a mouse which can be any type, PS2 mouse or a USB mouse. But nowadays nobody is using PS2, everything is being replaced with USB. Then you have a keyboard type again, which it will support both the PS2 as well as USB. But again, we generally make use of USB. We do not find PS2 anymore. Okay. Then if it is a CD-ROM drive, CD-ROM means if you are installing a operating system Linux from a CD, you should see to it that your system should have a CD drive. That means a place where you put a CD and insert a CD. So you should have that CD drive into the system. If at all you are installing the Linux from CD. If you are downloading or if you are using a pen drive, then it is not necessary that you should have a CD drive inside the system. Again, if you are using a CD, it does not say that you should have a CD driver of Sony company or of Samsung company or of HP company. Any company is allowed. It is compatible with any CD. Okay. The next is hard disk drive manufacturer. Hard disk drive manufacturer means it should have a hard disk inside your system. Why is that hard disk required? Because since our RAM is in MB, we cannot have more amount of data storage inside a RAM. So we always require a secondary storage to store the data inside our system. So for that, we require a hard disk. So again, a Linux says that it is not necessary your hard disk should be only of Sony brand and only of 1 TB like this or 500 GB like this. You can have any hard disk provided by any manufacturer like Seagate, Maxtor, anything. Apart from that, you can use any hard disk like IDE, SCSI, SATA, PATA, any hard disk will be supported. But the thing is that it should just have a hard disk for storing the data inside the system. Now that depends. If you use PATA, the transmission will be double, but if you use SATA, the transmission will be single. Okay. Then next is size of the hard disk. If you see, it supports the size from MB till TB. So it is not necessary you should have a hard disk only of 1 TB or 500 GB. Minimum requirement is 700 MB. So if in the system or if in your hard disk, if you have 700 MB also, your Linux will be very properly installed and all the files and folders or whatever the user creates will also be operated very smoothly with a minimum size in hard disk as 700 MB. Okay. Then video card. What is that video card? A VGA manufacturer. Now, what is that VGA manufacturer? This is nothing but a monitor. So your monitor should not be of any specific company or anything like that. If there's a simple monitor with any screen size like 14, 15, 16, anything, you will be able to see the surface or the interface very clearly. Okay. So that is with respect to your monitor. That is the display size of the monitor and the manufacturer of the monitor. Next is printer, manufacturer, type and port. So this part is optional. When we do require a printer, when I want to print any document from the system. So it is not necessary you have to compulsorily install printer if it is a Linux operating system. But even if you install a printer, any type of printer on any port of any manufacturer will be installed. So it is not necessary that you have to install a printer of HP or printer of Canon. If any type of printer will work. Again, it is not necessary that it should be a laser printer. Even if it is dot matrix or even if it is inkjet printer, it will allow you to install. And it is not again necessary that you should have a printer with a separate port. If it is a USB port printer, it will allow you USB port also. But if at all you have seen a dot matrix printer, the cable of dot matrix is little large. So the port for that is separate. So Linux operating system will allow any type of printer to be installed. And once it is installed, it will print any kind of document as well. Okay. Next is networking information. Now, how can you check a networking information? Now, what is the main information that we want with respect to networking is our IP address. So how do we check our IP address? We check our IP address. If it is Windows, we make use of command called as ipconfig. If it is Windows, okay. Where do we type this command? We go to command prompt, that is we press Windows R, we type CMD and our command prompt opens. What if I want to know the IP address? What do I type? A command there is ipconfig. As soon as I type ipconfig and when I press enter, it will give me what is my IP address. When will this command be used? If it is a Windows operating system. But if in Linux I want to know that what is my IP address, I have to make use of a command called as ifconfig. So ifconfig, when you type this command and press enter, again it will show you IP address of the system. So if at all you want to know any networking information with respect to your IP address, you're supposed to type this command. Okay, when you type this command, what information does your system gives you? It gives you a host name, domain name, IP address, net mask, DNS IP address, and router IP address. Okay. Now, what is this domain name? Domain name means what? If your system belongs to one particular domain, that means if it is managed by the main server or if the connectivity is coming from a main data center. In such case, you will find a domain name. Whereas if the systems that you have at your home will not be belonging to any domain, but the one which we have in our labs, we are getting the internet connectivity not from the server directly. We are getting the connectivity from the data center. I think every one of you have visited the data center which is there in the management building. So you have a data center there. Service provider is giving a connectivity to that data center, and then from that data center, the connectivity is distributed to all the different institute. So we are belonging to a domain of that data center, and then that data center is taking the service directly from the service provider. Whereas we will not get this domain name when we are using the systems at our home. Why? Because we are directly connected to a router and we are using the services from directly from the service provider. So the service providers are different and we are taking services directly from there. Therefore, we do not belong to any of these domain. Okay. Now, what is this DNS IP address? Again, this DNS is domain name service. Now, what is this domain name service is what? I am connected to a network, but there is some intermediate proxy. Now, what is that proxy? I am not relieving my IP address to the person whom I am sending a data. So if suppose I am sending a data to Aditi, and in between, if I have installed a proxy server, what will happen is if my IP address is 0.0.0.1, where will the data first go? It will not go directly to Aditi. It will first go to the intermediate proxy server. What will proxy server do? It will change the IP address to 0.0.0.2, for example. And then it will transmit with this IP address as 0.0.0.2 to Aditi. So Aditi will never come to know that from which machine was that this data was received to me. It is simply like your Google server. I am typing some data, I am getting a response. Do I know from where that response is coming? Is it coming from India? Is it coming from US? Or is it coming from Thane? Or is it coming from Dombivli? I do not know. Why? Because there are many intermediate proxy servers which are changing the IP address. So this is possible by having a DNS server into the system. Okay. So if your system is connected to some proxies, those proxies are managed by the domain name service, and then this communication is happening. So if at all you do not want to reveal your IP address, or if you want to keep it secret, you use such type of communication. Okay. So all this information or all this networking information can be known even if you have installed your Linux into the system by making use of ifconfig command. Okay. Next we'll see is how are we supposed to install the Linux. So now we have seen that we require some hardware, we require some software, we require some networking information. Printer is also required, but it is optional and it again depends upon the user. So if I wish, I will install. If Aditi does not wish, she might skip to install the printer. But the common thing is that I will require hard disk, I will require CPU, I will require, if I am installing it from CD, I will require a CD drive. If I am installing it from pen drive, I will require a pen drive. If I am installing it directly from the net or I am downloading it from the internet, I will require a network connectivity. Okay. So now we'll see how are we supposed to install the Linux operating system from the internet. Okay. So what is the step one? Download the Linux distribution of your choice. Now your Linux distribution is nothing but the version. So it is, if you wish you install 16, if you wish you install 17, if you wish you install 13, you wish you install 7, any version, whichever you want, you simply choose the version that you want to install. Once you have selected the version, you simply go to the google.com, you type Linux version 17, download. So whichever is the first link that you get to know will allow you to download the operating system. Now if you see, you will get an interface like this. Okay, now what the version I am installing over here is Ubuntu 12.4. So what I have typed into my Google is Linux version 12 download. So when I get to see this version, I simply have to click this Ubuntu. If you scroll, you will get to see all the versions which are there inside the system, which are already there inside the market. So if you see, you see this Ubuntu 13. Even if you scroll, you will get to see 14, 15, 16, and all the different versions. So whichever you want, you simply click on that particular version. It will start the downloading. The text is a welcome window which you will get. Now what you can see on the left hand side is a language. That is, you want which language to be used as a communication. So by default, we have to select English. So when I select English, I get to see this window on the right hand side. Okay, where first it says try Ubuntu and second it says install Ubuntu. Now, what do you mean by try Ubuntu? If you just want to see that how the Ubuntu looks like and how it is going to operate, you can simply click on this try Ubuntu. It will take you to the steps where it will show you how your Linux operating system looks like. But if you are already aware of that how the Linux operating system looks like, you can directly click on this install Ubuntu. So what it will do is it will start installing the operating system inside your computer. Once it is installed, you will get to see such file onto your desktop. Okay, now you might say this interface is already of Ubuntu. That means this is already Ubuntu is already installed in this system, but I can follow this step even if it is in Windows. That means what I will be doing, I have Windows operating system right now in front of me. I'll go to Google, I'll simply type Ubuntu Linux version 12 download. When I download, I'll get to see a same window like this. I click on Ubuntu 12. It will ask me select the language. I'll select English. It will ask me whether you want to try or you want to install. I will select install. Once I have installed, it will be installed on the desktop of Windows right now. Why? Because I am switching from Windows to Linux. Okay. So once when I get to see this, which means what? The software or the operating system is being installed, but is being there into my system, but I have not installed it. I have just downloaded it. Okay. After you double click on it, it will ask you or it will show you the message preparing to install Ubuntu. Okay. Now, after you click on this continue, it will take you to the next step. Now, when you are gone to the next step, if you see on the window, it will first ask you that you have to create a username and password. Now, this is the page where you can make yourself as admin. That means you can make yourself as a root user. So what information you are supposed to supply over here is you have to give your name, type your name, any username which you want to keep. If you want to keep it as admin, you keep it admin. If you want to keep it as root, you keep it as root. If you want to keep it your own name, you can type your own name also. So for example, I will type Neeti over here. Then again, it will ask me to type a name. Again, I will type a computer name. Then it will ask me to confirm with the password, which means what? I am making myself as a root admin or as a root of a system. And to open the system, every time it will first ask me for this password. So if at all any one of you do not know this password, you will never be able to log in inside the system. Why? Because I have made my system right now as a root system whose password is known only to me. But if you want to get added and use the system, what you have to do is I have to create a user with your name. That is, I will create a user Aditi. I will give a password Aditi123 and I will give this information to Aditi. So what will Aditi do? Aditi can log in into my system, but she cannot use my ID and my password. She has to use her ID and her password. So what is happening? I am differentiating here as who is the normal user and who is the root user. So right now I am supplying only the root information. Once my operating system is installed, I will open the terminal and then I will create a user Aditi. Then I will pass her ID and password to her. So next time when she wants to log in inside the system, what she has to give is her own ID and password. Correct? So this is how I differentiate between root and normal user. So at a time when you install, you are acting as an admin of a system. Later, if you create multiple users, those multiple users will behave like a normal user until and unless you do not give your password to the normal user. Clear? So this is where I give my password, and after that I have to simply click on continue. After that, it is asking me erase the disk and install Ubuntu. Now what does this mean? Where I am doing this process right now, it is on the Windows operating system. That means I have downloaded and I am now following these steps to remove Windows and add Linux. So erase this disk means what? It will remove or it will clear all the partitions of your current hard disk. That means C drive will be cleared, D drive will be cleared, E, F, X, Y, Z, which how much ever drives you have made, all the drives information will be cleared, which means it will remove or it will erase all the contents right from the Windows operating system, which is present in C, till all the user information, which is there in D, E, X, Y, Z. Okay, which means what? your hard disk is now completely empty and it will be installed with the Ubuntu operating system. So if you click continue or if you click on install, what will happen? Your Windows is now being erased and your Ubuntu is being replaced with your Windows operating system. Okay. After that, it will ask, once the installation has been completed, it will ask you to restart the system. You simply have to click on this restart button. And once your restart has been done, it will check the hardware, whether all the hardware that are there inside the system are compatible or not. After the check of the hardware is done, you can simply log in into your Ubuntu operating system. Okay, so now what ID and password you will use to log in inside the system is, you will type the password and ID which you have used over here. Okay, it's just a second. ना? हेलो, हाँ मैडम, मैं अभी लेक्चर में हूँ, मैं आपको बाद में फोन करूँ? हेलो. Okay, so what are you supposed to do is, you have to use this ID and password after the installation is done. Why? Because you have created just one user right now. After you have logged in inside this, that is after you have logged in with this ID and password, you can open the terminal and then give a command to create a user Aditi and then give a password to it, and then you will have two users now. One which you are login and second will be the details of Aditi. So initially when you're installing, you will have only one ID and password to log in. Later on, when you have logged in inside the system, you can use or you can create multiple users and then use those user ID and password to log in inside the system. Okay, is this clear up till here, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
So what I have done is, we had Windows operating system, we downloaded Linux, we installed Linux by clearing all the contents of Windows. Okay. Now it might happen that many a times if I want Windows also, if I want Linux also, I can have both operating system inside that. What do we do is, we have to install a virtual box, an Oracle virtual box. When we install that Oracle virtual box, what will I do is, I have Windows as already there inside my system, and through that Oracle virtual box, I will install Linux. So as and when I want, I can use Linux also through that virtual box. And if I want Windows, I can use Windows also. So it is not necessary that your computer will have only one operating system. It can have multiple operating system also with the help of the Oracle VirtualBox software. So you have to install that software first, and then through the software, you have to install Linux or any other operating system. Clear? Now, next topic is system installer. Now, what is system installer? Now you have two kinds of installer. One is system installer, one is user installer. Now what is happening in user installer? You do not have any administrative privileges. What are those administrative privileges? You do not require any kind of ID and password to neither install anything, to neither update anything, or to neither upgrade anything. Okay, if you are acting as a user installer. But if it is a system installer, what you have to do is, every time to install anything, to update anything, or to upgrade anything, you will always require an administrative password. It will not allow you to update or download anything unless you do not provide this system or admin information. Once you give a correct ID and password, it will allow you to install. Many a times you might have observed in our labs, few of the system does not allow you to install anything or download anything into C and D drive. Why is that setting done? Because such settings are called as system installer, where I am asking a normal user to first give the ID and password of admin to download. If the user has that ID and password, he can download. But if it does not have those ID and password, you will not be able to install anything into those drive. That is called as, those drives are being restricted from any kind of user download or any kind of user update, if it is system installer. But if it is normal user account, that is if I have logged in with Aditi's account, I can do anything with respect to that user account. I can download as well as I can upload. Why? Because it is normal user and we call that as user installer. But if I am an admin and if I am making Aditi as a admin by using that su command, switch user command. So now every time when Aditi will download, Aditi has to give the ID and has to give the password. Okay, so that is what is system installer. And every time you download and every time you install, it will always restart the computer it will always restart your computer before you use that particular software. Okay, that is what is system installer. I repeat again, you have two kind of installer. One is system, one is user. System installer can be used by admin, or it can be used by any other user who knows the ID and password of the admin. User installer is used by all the normal users who are created by the system. If you are a user installer, you do not have to give any ID or password for downloading or updating anything. But if you are system installer, that means if you are an admin, every time you download and every time you install anything, you always have to give the admin ID and admin password. And every time you install anything, it will always restart your system. Okay. Now, next topic is adding and updating packages. Now, what we have done up till here, my Linux operating system has been installed. I can start using any software, any applications, whatever I want. Now, if I want to add any external packages, so what I have to do that, I have to make use of certain commands to install those packages. One way is you go to Google, you simply download, follow the GUI steps, that is go click on next, next, next and get that application installed. Second alternative is you make use of shell, that is command prompt, to install that particular application. Why we use both the methods? Because Linux is command based operating system also, as well as it is GUI. So we generally do not make use of command prompt, we generally make use of GUI only. But if at all I want to make use of command prompt, I should know those commands also. So what are the commands for adding and updating the packages that we will be seeing right now? Okay, so advanced packaging tool, APT, to manage the additional applications and to install the latest update. So what is this? If you want to install anything latest or download anything latest with respect to any application, you have to make use of this tool. What is that tool? What is that tool? Advanced packaging tool, called as APT. Okay, so if you whenever you update, whenever you upgrade, you have to make use of this command APT. Okay, before running any APT get command, you need to run APT get update, which means what is the difference in APT get and APT get update? APT get means you are getting that particular application. So suppose my application is Firefox. If I want to download Firefox in Linux, what I will use a command APT get Firefox, which means what? Why I'm using APT? Because I want to download, or after it is downloaded, I need to update. So whenever I download anything or whenever I update anything, I have to make use of this APT, that is advanced packaging tool. When I say APT get Firefox, which means what? It will download Firefox or it will get Firefox into my system. But when I say APT get update Firefox, which means what? It will find the updated version of Firefox and then it will download that particular version. Which means what? Before running this get command, you should always first understand which is the latest update and then try to install the latest update into your system. So for example, Firefox version 3 is the latest version. So if I do not know, what will I do is I will simply use a command APT get Firefox. Now when I execute this APT get Firefox, it might install 1, 2 or it might install 3 also. I do not know. But before doing this, if at all I do APT get update Firefox and when I press enter, it will tell me all the version, Firefox 1, Firefox 2, Firefox 3, Firefox 4, Firefox 5 and so on. So with this, what will I understand that yes, Firefox 6 is the latest. So what will I do is now I will install APT get Firefox 6. So which means what? I am installing the latest, everything which is latest inside my system. So to install everything which is latest, what you have to do is you have to first run the update and then you have to install that particular application. So by using this update, you get to know which is the updated version. And once you know which is the updated version, then you can simply download that updated version. Okay. So how do you installing the apps using APT is easy. How it is easy? You have to type this command. What is this command? Sudo apt install app name. What is this app name? The name of the application that you want to install. So what is the application that I want to install is, say suppose Chrome. So what will I type is sudo apt install Google Chrome. Okay, so it will install which particular application, the name of the application that I have written here, and from where it will take the application, it will take the application from advanced packaging tool. Now what is the sudo? Whenever you make a use of a command sudo, it will always ask you for ID and password. So after I execute this command, that means after I type this command and when I press enter, the very next step is it will not directly start installing, it will ask you for the password. So this can be done by using a normal user mode also, or by using a normal admin mode also. But what is the thing is, whenever you use sudo, you should know the password. So if you know the password, it will allow you to install. If you do not know the password, you can always skip this sudo and you can directly start with the command apt install app name. So that is only the meaning of sudo. If you write, you have to give a password. If you do not write, you do not have to give the password. So it is all user's choice whether you want to give a password before installation or you want to skip the password. Okay, so with this command I can install. But if I want to remove that application or uninstall that application, what do we do in Windows? We go to add and remove programs. We search for that application. We simply click on uninstall button. It will get uninstalled. But how do we do it in Linux? If it is a command based, we use a command sudo apt remove app name. So again, why sudo? If you give sudo, it will ask you for password before it removes. If you do not write this sudo, it will directly remove. It will not ask you for the password. So install will add that particular application and remove will delete that particular application. So to remove Google Chrome, what I'm supposed to write? Sudo apt remove Google Chrome. As soon as I press enter, it will ask me to type the password. I will type the password as 123 and it will remove that. If I only use a command apt remove Google Chrome, it will not ask me for the password. It will directly remove Google Chrome from the system. Okay, so this is how you install any particular application in Linux, and you can remove the application as well. So install is used to add and remove is used to delete the application. Now to upgrade your apps, you will first need to update the app repository. Now, what is this repository? It is a place inside your system, that is it is the directory inside your system which will keep all the latest updates and upgrades with respect to your application. Okay, so that we call it as repository. Repository means a directory inside your system. The name of that directory is update repository. What will that update repository do? It will keep all the latest updates with respect to all the applications that are there inside the system. So if you want to update or upgrade any particular application, what are you supposed to use the command sudo apt update? So what it will do, it will update that particular application name. It will update that particular application. But if you do not mention this application name, it will by default update all the applications. But if you give the application name over here, for example, sudo apt update Google Chrome, so it will only update a Google Chrome. So if you give the application name, it will update only that. But if you do not give the application name, by default, whichever applications are there, it is going to update all the applications inside the system. Okay. Now next is C. If you want to update any single app, what you have to do is you have to sudo apt update, give the app name. So it will update only that particular app. But if you do not give that app name, it would update all the applications. Now you might know that there are different versions of Linux. You have Ubuntu as one of the version, Red Hat as one of the version, Kali Linux as one of the version, then Debian Linux as one of the version. So for every versions, there is slight change in the commands. But since we are studying Ubuntu, so all these commands that we have learned so far, install app name, remove app name, update app name, this is with respect to Ubuntu. But all these all these commands will change if I change from Ubuntu to any other version of Linux system. Okay, so if you see this sudo yum install app name, what is this sudo yum install app name? This yum identifies that it is a Red Hat Linux. Okay, so what I'm going to do is when I say sudo yum install Google Chrome, So what is a system understanding? That the Linux installed in the system is which? It is a Red Hat Linux installed. How did I identify it? Because of this yum command that I have used inside the command. Okay. Can you see this DNF? DNF is used if it is a Debian operating system or a Debian Linux operating system. So when I say sudo DNF install Google Chrome, so Google Chrome will be installed inside which Linux operating system? It will be installed in your Debian Linux operating system. Now you do not have to remember these two commands. This is just for your extra information. The only thing you have to remember is up till here. That is how you are supposed to update all by using this command. You are supposed to update single by using this command. All this can be skipped. Why? Because this is just for your extra information that how the commands change if you change the operating system. So yum is used if it is Red Hat, DNF is used if it is Debian. Again, if you do not write this yum and if you directly write RPM, RPM also stands for Red Hat. Okay, so when I say sudo rpm -i app name .rpm, so what it will do is if I say sudo rpm -i google chrome .rpm, so what will the system understand this? That you have to download or you have to install this Google Chrome for which version of a Linux? For the Red Hat version. How did it identify? With the extension .rpm and with this command rpm. Okay, so either you use yum with install or you use rpm with I. Both of them are used for Red Hat version of Linux. How do you remove those applications? Is same. If it is Red Hat, you remove it with yum remove app name. If it is Debian, you remove it with DNF remove app name. Okay, so these commands keep on changing if you shift from one particular type of operating system to another type of operating system. But we'll stick only to Ubuntu because we have Ubuntu in our syllabus. So if you want to install anything in a Ubuntu, you have to simply say sudo apt install app name. If you want to remove, you will say sudo apt remove app name. If you want to update all the applications, you will say sudo apt update. And if you want to only update one particular application, you will say sudo apt update and the name of that app. Okay, is this clear? If you want to update your Red Hat applications and your Debian applications, what are the commands? Either you can use sudo yum update or you can use sudo dnf upgrade or update. Anything will do. Okay, so we are not supposed to remember with respect to Red Hat and that. We are supposed to stick only with Linux. Is this clear up till here? How are we supposed to install any application? How are we supposed to update and how are we supposed to remove? This question is asked for 8 marks with the step of installation. That describe the procedure for installing Linux operating system and also write the commands for installing, removing and updating. So you have to write the steps of Linux first, followed by these commands. You are not supposed to give the commands of Red Hat, only of Ubuntu. That is self-understood. Okay. Now next is upgrade a currently installed package with a new version. Which means what? I have that application installed. I will just update that particular application with a new version. So I already have Firefox installed, which is say suppose of version 3. Now I will just update that Firefox from version 3 to version 4. So what I do is I have already installed. So which version I have installed? Sudo apt install Firefox is equal to 4.45.0.2. So I have installed a Firefox with this version number. Now if I want to update or if I want to upgrade that version, that means there are something extra features which are added into that existing version number. So how will I do that? I will use a command sudo apt get update Firefox 4.0.2. That means it will extract the features or it will extract the updated features of this version 4.5.2. And after that, it will upgrade. So see, whenever I want to upgrade any application, I have to first update the application and then I have to upgrade. Okay. Update means bring that and upgrade means shift from the old version to the new version. So in Linux, whenever I update anything or whenever I upgrade anything, I first have to update that and then I have to upgrade. And this remains common with respect to any software or any application. So if I want to do same thing for my, say suppose Google Chrome, so I will first update that version and then I will get the upgraded copy of it. Okay, so the command for both is same, just update is replaced with upgrade. So what you have done is you have installed that, and by using these two commands you are updating the latest features of the same version. Okay, so if you want to change the version, what you have to do is first you have to install that version and then you have to take the updates of that version. Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now next is if I want to find the version, what I have done over here, I knew the version, okay, 45.0.2 is the version. I knew this. But if at all I do not know what is the version, how do I know the version is? By using a command apt-show-version and the name of the application over here. So by using this show versions, what I will get to know is the version number of that particular application. So if at all, if it is Linux, and if I do not know that konsa version I had installed, and now if I want to check, I can use certain commands. Which are those commands? First is C. The procedure to find the version of Linux, what you have to do is you have to open the terminal. Which terminal? The bash terminal. And you have to type certain commands. Which are those commands? These three commands are used if at all you want to know the version number of a Linux. So when I type the first command, that is $cat/etc/os release, I will get such big output. I will get name as Ubuntu, version as 17, ID as so and so, then it is like Debian, then the name is Ubuntu 17.10. So I'll get all this information. Out of which what I just wanted to check is the version number. So I'll just concentrate on this version is equal to 17.10 or pretty name as Ubuntu 17.10. So by executing this command, that is cat/etc/os release, what do I get to know is I have installed Ubuntu version 17 inside my system. Okay, so this is a command used to know which version of Linux operating system is installed inside the computer. What is the other command? lbs_release. So when I execute lbs_release-a and when I press enter, I will get this output. Out of which what I am to see the description. So what will I get to know is CentOS Linux 7.4 is a version which I have installed. Previously Ubuntu was installed. Now CentOS, which is again one of the version of Linux, with the version number 7.4 is installed in my system. So you have Red Hat, you have Kali, you have Ubuntu, you have Debian, and you have CentOS also. Okay, so whichever you install, the name will appear over here if you use any of the command. So if you use cat command and if you have CentOS installed, what you will get as output over here is CentOS 7.2. Okay, this is a third command to know the version number. Host name CTL. So when I say or when I write the command host name CTL and press enter, you will get this as an output. Out of which what do I want is to know the operating system. So which is the operating system? Ubuntu 16.4 is the operating system of Linux installed inside my computer. Okay, so these three commands are used to know the version number. Apart from this, there is one simplest command, uname-r. So if you do not remember all of these, there is one command called as uname-r. So when you execute this command, you will get to see 4.13.0 generic version is installed inside your system. So you either use this cat command or you use lbs command or you use the host name command or you used uname command. All of them are going to display you the version number installed in the computer. Is this clear? But for you, you have to remember all these four commands. Huh? You do not have choice. If it is asked in theory, which is the command used to check the operating system, if it is for 3 marks and if it is only for listing, you have to list all the 4 commands. Okay. Is this clear up till here? There's one more command, cat/proc/version. So if you again execute this, that will also give you the version number of Linux installed inside the computer. So Linux version 3.10 is installed inside the computer. So this is optional. If you want, you remember, but these four are compulsory. These four are supposed to be learned by you to remember the version of the operating system. Is this clear up here? Everyone? Aditi, Shweta? Okay. So we move to the next topic, that is user and group management. Okay, there is that is 11:51 in my watch. I give you 5 minutes. Take a break of 5 minutes and then we continue. We'll be back at 11:56. Do not leave the meeting. Stay connected. Is everyone back?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we start. Next topic, user and group management. Now we know that we can create a admin user and then that admin can create a multiple normal users. So what will your Linux have? It will have a admin user as well as it will have a normal user. Now, if you remember, I had told you that every user has to belong to some or the other group inside your Linux operating system. So what do we call this user and group management is nothing but the management of multiple users and the management of users belonging to those multiple groups. So it is not necessary that every user will be a part of one group, but it might happen that I am a part of one group whereas you all are part of some another group. So there can be multiple users belonging to multiple groups. So since a Linux is a multi-user operating system, several people may be logged in and actively working on a given machine at the same time. So multi-user means many people can work on a system at the same time. So adding a new user involves dealing with an account other than own, which requires a super user or a root privilege. So if I want to add any user, we have to require, what do we require is we should have either a root admin ID or password, or we should switch to the user account by using a command su. I had explained you this last time. So when I execute a command su, what will happen is I am making some another person also as a administrator. So whatever I can do, everything can be done by that normal user also. Why? Because now I have made him a super user. Okay, which means I have given him all the root or admin rights. So it is either I will be creating the users or I will give my rights to somebody else by creating a super user, and then that super user can create a multiple groups. Okay. In Linux, every user is assigned an individual account which contains all files, informations, and data of the user. Which means what? Everyone has its own home directory. So if I am a user, I will have my files in the home directory. If you are a user, you will also have your files inside a home directory. So everybody in the Linux is given a space inside a home directory for managing his or her individual files and information. Okay. You can create multiple users in Linux. So it is not necessary only one users. We can have multiple users with multiple groups. Now, which command is used for creating a user? So if I am a root user, I can create multiple user. I have given my rights to Nishtha. Now Nishtha can also create multiple users. So which command me and Nishtha will be using? I will use a command sudo add user my Linux. What is this my Linux? It is a name of a user. If I have added sudo, it is the next thing that it will ask me immediately. It will ask me for a password. What is this add user command used for? It is used for adding a user. So which user is added? Add user my Linux. So the user called as my Linux is added inside the system. So as soon as you execute this command and after you give a password, what information your system will give me? It is adding a user my Linux. It is adding new group my Linux, which means what? It is adding a user my Linux to some group, which is that group number 1002. Adding new user my Linux 1002 with group my Linux. That means here the group name is given as 1002. Here it is adding that newly created user my Linux to the group number 1002. It is also creating a home directory for that particular user with the same username, that is /home/my Linux. So as it is said over here, that in Linux, every user is assigned with an individual account which contains all the files and folders. So when that user is created, everything with respect to that user will go inside his own name folder, which is there inside the home directory. Okay. Copying the files from /etc/skel, which means what? If any additional information which is required for that user to work, all that additional information is copied from etc directory. Enter a new Unix password. This means what? Now I am going to secure this user with a password. So if I give a password over here as my Linux 123, which means what? A user will log in with a username as my Linux and with a password as my Linux 123. So this is the time when you create a password for the user that you are adding inside the system. So if I am a root user and if I have executed this command, which means what? I have added a user my Linux, I have given a password to it. Now I will share this details with that particular person, and that person will be able to log in inside the Linux by using this as a username, and whatever password is being given over here, it will log in with that password name. So I have created a normal user over here. After this, when I execute su my Linux, that is switch user my Linux, which means what? I have created or I have made that my Linux as a root user now. So whatever I can do, everything my Linux can also do. But when I execute that su, so when I execute that su, immediately this dollar will get changed to hash, which is nothing but the shell for the root user. Okay, so this is how you create a you create a normal user. So once you have entered the password, it will ask you to retype the password. Then it will give you a message that a password has updated successfully. Then it will change some user information. So what information it is going to save? Full name of a user, room number, work phone, home phone, all these details will be saved. So you have to type this information. Once this information is typed, it will ask you whether it is correct. If it is correct, you have to type Y. If you feel that it is not correct, you are supposed to press N. Okay, so once you press Y, it will successfully create this user with a name my Linux, and it will store this information of a user in the home directory. Okay, so there are 3 steps that you have to do when you are supposed to create a user. First is use a command sudo add user for creating a user. Second is give the password for that account and then enter the details. Once the details are entered, you have to confirm the details by pressing Y. So once these steps are created, it will show you that a new account is being created. Okay, now if you want to create a user, or if without password you want to log in as a root user, what you are supposed to do is add user ABC. That means I have replaced that sudo. So whenever I replace that sudo, it will never ask me to give the password. I can simply create a user, which means what? I have created this my Linux, which is a normal user. Now my Linux can also create a user without giving a password by using this command add user ABC, which means what? Root has created my Linux. Now my Linux normal user has created another normal user called as ABC. If I add a sudo over here, what will that my Linux has to do? That my Linux should know my password. So I can do both the ways. That is, normal user can create another normal users, but root users can also create a normal users. But if at all you want to switch to the root account, you should know the root password. Clear? Now there are 4 main user administration files, which means what? You create any users, n number of users, all those users will have these 4 files inside the system, which is the first file /etc/password. That means it is storing all the password information that you have given over here is stored inside this file, which is there inside etc. Same information of a password is stored in an encrypted format. But in which file? In a shadow file. Again, where is that file? Inside etc. Okay, so you have a file information of a password in this etc/password also. Same information is encrypted and stored inside /etc/shadow also. Now that user is belonging to which group, and what is that group information? Is stored where? Inside /etc/group directory. Again, same information is stored in an encrypted format in /etc/g_shadow. So this G shadow is for what? It is for group shadow information, and normal shadow is only for password. So every user that is getting created right from root to the normal user, every users will have these 4 kinds of file inside the etc directory. Shadow will contain encrypted information, group will contain group information, and password will contain normal password information. Okay. When a new user account is added to the system, the following operations are performed. His or her home directory is created. So we just saw that the home directory, creating a home directory. So the home directory is created. The following hidden files are copied into the user's home directory and will be used to provide environment variables for his or her user session. Now, what is this? Some kind of hidden files are copied. If you see over here, there was one copying files from /etc/skel. Did you find any file name over here? No. Why? Because those are hidden files. Which are those files? They are bash logout and bash profile. So these two hidden files are copied from etc inside the home directory. What is this bash logout going to store? What time did a user logged in and what time did a user logged out? Every day, every hour, whenever the user logs in and logs out, every detail will be stored inside this logout this file bash_logout. But what is the name of a user? What is the full name? What is this room number? What is this phone work? What is his home phone? What is the other information? Everything that you type here will be nothing but stored in a hidden format inside bash_profile. Okay, so where is this information that you have typed getting stored? It is stored in a hidden format inside your own home directory with a file name called as bash_profile. And once you as a normal users are created, and every time you log in and log out, all those login logout time details will be stored in a hidden format, again in which file? In bash_logout file. Is this clear? So this file is getting created with respect to each and every user inside the system, but it cannot be visible like these files. It is always hidden. Okay. Now next is we'll understand /etc/password file. So what did I say? This file is created for every user who is getting added inside the system. Now what information is stored? Username, X, UID, GID, comment, home directory, and default shell. What is this username? Username is the name of a user. So my Linux will be the username. Okay. Now what is this X, which is the second field? It shows that your account is protected inside your etc/shadow folder. So this X indicates what? Whatever information is there in this file, the same copy of the information is encrypted and stored in a protected format. But where it is stored? It is stored inside the etc/shadow folder. So this X means it is protected. If this X is not there, that means that information is not protected and the entry is not there inside the shadow file. Okay. What is this UID and GID? It is nothing but the user ID and the group ID. So we get to know the user ID when we create a user. 1002 is the user, is the group ID. But if you want to know the user ID, there is a command called as PS command. When you execute the PS command, that is PS my Linux, if you execute like this, you get to know your UID also. So this information about the user ID, and every user has a unique ID. Okay. So all this unique ID and the group IDs are also stored inside this etc/password file. Now, if any additional comments are written, those additional comments are also stored over here. Next is the home directory. What is this home directory? It is nothing but the default home directory which gets created when you create a user. So the name of the home directory is also stored inside your etc/password file, and which is the default shell. So if you are a normal user, your default shell will be having a $. If you are a root, your default shell will be hash. Okay. So that detail is also stored inside etc/password file. So your username is stored. How is your data protected? That is also communicated. What is your user ID? What is your group ID? Which is your home directory and which is your default shell? All the details are stored inside etc/password file. Okay. Next, and again, all this information in an encrypted form is stored where? Inside this etc/shadow. Okay. So whatever is there in password, same to same is copied in shadow, but this will be in a readable format, but this won't be in a readable format. Who can access this readable format? Only the particular user. So my Linux can only access this, but ABC cannot access my Linux. My Linux cannot access ABC. Okay. Now next we'll see what information is there in /etc/group. You will have a group name, you will have a group password, you will have group ID, and you will have group members. So your My Linux belongs to which group name? 1002. That group, when it was created, it was given with some password. So that password is also stored over here. Your group name and your group ID will be same if you have not kept it different. But many a times groups are given with name also, groups are given with ID also. For example, name is TYCO, ID is 1002. So name will become TYCO, ID will become 1002. But if at all you have not given the name, your name and ID will remain same, which is 1002. So if you see over here in the user which we created, there was no name. It is 1002 only. So by default, over here, group name will also be 1002. Group ID will also be 1002. After that, what you will get to see is all the group members. So you can have My Linux, ABC, then XYZ, all the users which belong to this group, all the users will be also listed. So your etc/group file is going to store the information about your group name, group ID, your group members, and every detail will be stored in an encrypted format in this gshadow file. Okay. Again, if a group number is 1002, only 1002 can access this information. But if there is a group number 1003, 1003 cannot access 1002, 1002 cannot access 1003. But if I am a root, I can access every password, every shadow, every group, and every group shadow also. Okay. So this is how your group and user informations are maintained in the respective files. We have also seen how the user is being created. Now we will see how we are supposed to create a group and how to add the members inside the group. Okay. So if I want to create a group, what is the command? Sudo group add group name. So if I want to create a group as TYCO Linux, what will I write? Sudo group add TYCO Linux. So what it will create? It will create a group with that name. So I have created a group with a name called as editorial over here. So sudo group add editorial. What is this editorial? It is nothing but the group name. Okay, so the command used to add a group name is, command to add a group is sudo group add group name. Clear? How we add the user to the group is C. Sudo user mod -a-g. First we give the group name and second we give the username. This is how we add a user to the group. Sudo, why sudo? Because if you write a sudo, you have to give a password. User mod means you are adding a user. -a-g. -g is the group. You are adding a group name and then you are adding a user to that group. So my group name is home and my user is Guru99, which means what? This Guru99 user is added to which particular group? It is added to the group home. Now, for this example, editorial, if I want to add My Linux to this, what will I make a change? Sudo user mod -a-g. First, I will write a group name, which is editorial. Then I will write a username, which is My Linux. Okay. So this is how you add a group. The system would ask an authentication and then it will add a user to the group. Why authentication? Because I have written sudo over here. Clear? You can check whether the user is in the group by this command. Now with this command, what did I do? I have added a user to that group. But if I want to see कि वो user बराबर add हुआ है कि नहीं वो group में, how will I check? Check that by using this command cat -etc-group. So when I press enter, it will show me the list of all the users that are there. So right now I can see Guru 99. Why? Because it was just added. Okay. So along with this, if I have my Linux, ABC, XYZ, all the names will be displayed. Why I am using etc/group? Because where I am storing my group member information, I am storing my group member information in etc/group file. Therefore, I have to use that command only to know which are the members of the group. So cat is, what does this cat means? The cat command is used to open that file and list whatever is written inside that file. So what is that? 1000 Guru 99. So 1000 is a group ID and 1000 is a group ID into which this user Guru 99 is added. Is this clear up till here? Danish?
Yes, ma'am.
So with this, we have seen how to create a user, how to create a group, how to add a user to the group. Once it is added, how to check the members inside the group. Okay. Now, if I want to remove the user from the group, how do I do that? Sudo delete user group name. That means sudo delete user, write the user name and write the group name from where it belongs. So it will remove that user from the particular group. So which was the group name? Our group name was home. Which was the user that we just added? Guru 99. So how will I remove? Sudo delete username as Guru 99 and group name as home. So if you see, it is sudo delete user Guru 99 home. What it is doing? It is removing a user Guru 99 from the group called as home. And after it is done, it will show you a message as done, which means this is removed. So when you're removing, you have to first write the user. And when you're adding, you have to first write the group and then write the user. Okay. And for deleting, you have to use or for removing, you have to use a command delete user. So DEL, which stands for delete, and user. Okay. This is how we remove the user. Now, if I want to delete or disable the account, what I have done here, I have just removed the user from the group. But is the user account there? Yes, the user account is there, but it is no more belonging to the group right now. But user hai. But agar mujhe user ko hi nikalna hai. So how do I do that? What do you mean by disabling the account? Disabling the account means user will be still there, but account cannot be used. And what do you mean by deleting account? Removing the user from the system. Both are different. I repeat again. Deleting the account means removing the user. Disabling the account means user account is there, but it is deactivated for some purpose. This is just like your Facebook. You disable the account means account hai aapka, but you will not be using it. But when I say delete the account, that means you have removed your account from Facebook. Okay. So we'll first see how to disable. So for disabling an account, we use a terminal. Terminal means we open the command prompt and we remove the password set to the account. So how do we disable this? We disable it with the help of the password. So how do we do that? Sudo password -l username. So when I write sudo password -l Ubuntu, what is this Ubuntu? It is the name of a user. Okay. So if you don't want to confuse, we'll keep a username as same Guru 99. Okay. So when I say sudo password -l Guru 99, it will ask you for the password. That is you type the password that you have set ABC, suppose ABC@123. So what it will do? Password expiry information changed, which means what? When you created the account, your password was created today. What is today's date? 11th August. Every password that you create has some expiry time, which is by default. Say for 3 months, 2 months, and every time it keeps on telling you that your 3 months are completed. Now you have to change the password. Many of them have a restriction also that when you are supposed to change, see to it that you do not keep it as a previous one. But many of them do not tell you this. They just ask you to change, or you can repeat them and keep the password as it is. So what am I doing by disabling the account is I am changing my expiry information. So if at all my expiry was in month of September, I am changing that expiry to month of August. And by changing this expiry information, I am disabling the account. Okay. That means even if I type the password, it will not allow me to accept that password. Why? Because my expiry information is now changed from September to August. So even if I want to use it, I have to first change that password and then I will be allowed to use the account. That is how you disable, by changing the expiry information of the password. And to do that, you have to use a command password -l followed by the name of the user. But if you want to delete the user account, that is remove the account permanently from the system, what you have to do is sudo user delete -r username. What is this user delete? User del is deleting the user. -r is to remove the user, and which user will be removed? Whatever name you give over here. So if I give the name as Guru99, it will remove Guru99 from the system. If I give my Linux, it will remove my Linux from the system. Okay. So you are disabling by changing the expiry date. Changing means you're preponing the expiry date so that you cannot use the account unless and until you change it. And you are deleting by removing the user permanently from the system. Is this clear up till here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So with this, we just a minute. Okay. So with this, we stop over here and we'll be continue by modifying the group from the next lecture. Now you are supposed to give the test. So I am making that test available on the classroom. So you are supposed to give from there. Okay. So is everything clear up till here for this chapter? We have installed Linux. We have seen what is the pre-list that we have to prepare. After preparing the list, we saw how to install. We saw how to install using our commands, how to update, how to remove. Then we had also seen how to create a user, how to create a group, how to add a user to the group, where is all group information stored, where is all user information stored, where is all user password information stored, how it is stored in a protected way. Then we have also seen how to remove the user from the group. We have also seen how to remove the account of a user and how to disable the user from the system. Okay. Now next time we'll see how to modify the group information. Go to your classroom. Switch your cameras on. Just see, can you see the form from the classroom? One of you please check. Aditi, can you see from the...
Yes, ma'am, we can see.
So start giving. Put your cameras
Yes,
on.
ma'am.
Why the camera is not on? हाँ. Viral, Soham. Sanskar, stop presenting. We can see your answers. Hmm.